that information has been added to the chat. Any items to add?
During the working session, I brought up the HVAC issue. I'm assuming that's something that should be covered here, but I'm not quite sure if you want to couch that as new business or old business, since it's been mentioned once, or other.
Yeah, I think we can. Yeah, new business or other, or I put in other or new business. I think that's the first time we'll talk about it in this committee. So yeah, we can definitely hit on that today.
And I had
anything.
I mean, I think this goes under new business or other as well, which is I had a parent ask me if there's anything for youth related to, like, something set up for youth to talk about gun violence and their fear and their experience. And I don't know. So I need to do some research on that, but it was something she was saying her son has been asking her about it. He's a middle schooler. I heard something on the news about students who had lost a friend who meet every year. And I know that's a separate thing, but it just made me think, like, is that something we might want to, you know, set up or.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. I put both topics under new business. That makes sense. And we can elaborate more on that.
Okay.
Any other topics, like a general kind of, like, I guess, start of school, touch on, just, are there any thoughts related to that? I'll just stick that under new business. I'm sure while we are not really recessing, but while we're probably taking a break for one of our meetings, that's when advocacy is going to start ramping up for start of school issues. So, all right, well, let's get started. For old business, the first item is the sexual assault, which the resolution passed, and most of the action items for the resolution related to convening a panel and then data points. The good news is we started trying to convene the panel, but due to, like, just summer months scheduling, we had people who are interested from other agencies, but we just couldn't get their schedules to align. So it seems like September, I would say, would be a good time to just do that whole doodle poll rescheduling, trying to get folks to convene. And I think, did I say that to Representative Sutter? I think I did when I spoke to President Sutter when we were trying to do finishing touches. I believe committed the September Outreach and Advocacy Committee meeting to that panel. That way we already have a lot of time for board members, and we only have to just coordinate with our agency partners. Does that sound okay?
It sounds right to me.
Yep.
Cool. All right, so that's set. In regards to data, we're asking a lot of sister agencies to make data available on the topic. Where do you think is a starting point for getting that done? And I don't have the resolution in front of me, but I know we were, like, asking OSCE to make some information available. It just seems like, talking to Representative Chang, that whenever you try to find data, a lot of agencies are pointing like this, like, go to this agency, go to that agency, and it's not like a one-stop shop, clear pathway to find information on schools. So,
Carlene, can you remind me what the data is for? Are we collecting it to create a report, or is it like we want to make a dashboard with all of the data available in one spot, or both? Or
I have the resolution. I don't have it in front of me, but I believe, I don't think it's for us to collect data. However, Susie, our staff member, pulled resolutions from other states who actually do collect data and make it available through the State Board of Education. But I also believe they have different governance structures. So it's like an action other state boards do, but may not fall under our purview. But like, I don't know if you look at like OSCE site, if that's a bit available. And then talking to Representative Chang, it was like MPD makes certain, or MPD says go look here, and then OSCE says go look somewhere else. So it's like, who should house this information? And I guess also what information should be housed. And I think we elaborate on that in our.
So I pulled up the resolution. I'm happy to share my screen if that's helpful. I'm also happy to put a link to it in the chat.
A link would
Could you pull up the screen?
I'll do both.
Could you link it and share your? Yeah, I'm working from my phone, so I need help.
Yeah, because I would say before I would be able to think about it, I'd need to understand more about what we want to do with the data.
So no data on sexual assault and abuse related to DC schools as easily available and transparent is in the whereas. Instances of sexual assault and abuse at schools are reported annually by OSCE and disaggregated by type, student to student, staff to student, sexual harassment, etc. So that's one.
Which line is that, Caroline?
Oh, yes, 24.
I see.
Actually, if you start at 16 and start moving down.
So the first one in line 16, there is currently no data on sexual assault and abuse. That's a whereas. So what would where's the whereas that connects to that? I guess it's 24 that OSCE would report. Is there anything else?
Yes, and I also think go down, you said 16 where it says no data.
Right.
Also starting in line 19. Start at line 19. I think that's where we start calling on agencies.
I see. Like data and such. Incomplete.
I mean, I think we really identified who we can contact at this point, and it's just a matter of these are the same people that are invited to the roundtable. I think it's a matter of in the invitation, sharing the resolution. I would also think it would be helpful to identify what questions we want to ask of people. I don't know if that's something we can do via email or we want to do today, or I'm not so sure I have a full list. I probably would want some time to think about what questions we would propose because in my head, the next step based on this resolution is just to follow up and saying like, hey, like these are the agencies, you're one of the agencies identified. We want to partner with you to figure out how to make this available. And that's, and the next step is to do that for each of the agencies identified.
Gotcha. And I will, we, when our first attempt at scheduling a panel, created some questions. So I'll email out those initial like 6 or 7 questions, and then we can add to the committee. And then we have time to add on before the invite goes out. So I will be sure to do that. Cool. Okay. Anything else from the resolution that you all see that we need to, or is it more like when we convene with the panel, it's like almost another step of to-dos after that?
Yeah, it does seem, it seems like once we have gathered all the information we are going to gather, that then we follow up maybe with communication with these other agencies that we're asking to do something, to make their data more available or more transparent or whatever it is we're asking.
Cool beans. Okay. On the slide over to the family engagement sign up. We had to, and staff members are working on converting. We had a Google Doc, but then there needs to be a conversion from Google to Microsoft.
Oh.
And I believe, who's our staff helping today? Is it Malaya or Darren?
Malaya and Darren are both here.
Okay. Malaya, did that conversion happen? I think it was just a quick switch, or do you know when it will be ready in the new format?
We are trying to get that done by the end of this week or early next week with everything.
Okay. And then Malaya, so I don't hold anything up. If you could, whenever that is switched over to the formats, just send it to the entire board.
Okay, sounds good.
Cool. And then I can just follow up and say, reminder of this is the parent engagement sign up for hopefully the engagement in the fall. Vice President Thompson, do we know what the fall engagement might look like, or is it something that we could tag onto as a committee for parent engagement, or should we be planning like our own separate possible initial meeting?
When you said what it might look like, I guess.
Yeah, so I think we're waiting to know, or we're curious to know if the fall engagement, is that going to be like an opportunity for outreach and advocacy to do like the initial kind of family engagement thing, or should we like try to plan our own? I know it was like limited resources, so we were trying to see if like it should be like a standalone family engagement meeting, or if this was something that we wanted to like be one of the topics for the fall engagement.
I mean, I think the question, so the way the fall engagement is designed is really to get feedback on things like subjects the board, just like last time, is considering.
Okay.
So I don't know. I think the question is really, does advocacy and outreach want that as a topic, as opposed to it's like, or are you talking about bringing the first people together to like convene them as a group? Those are different. In my head, those are different things. But if you wanted to, and the staff is working on the back end to just like it coordinate it, but the bones are the same. So the question is really like, if it's that advocacy and outreach is saying one of the sessions we want to be considered for this is having a conversation about what's in, like, what is family engagement, or what's included as far as Title I, or what's included in ESSA, like that That's the thing. I think it's different if the next step identified during that time is saying, we want to host a meeting for the people who are on the task force, because that seems like a more invitation closed thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Representative Gassoy, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think you shared a very bare bones presentation that I guess it's more like questions to ask families that what I thought it was for something like this engagement. It could be ward level engagement or like, the fall engagement session, but the idea would be that we would be both sharing information about the ESSA family engagement standards and also getting input on like what resonates with families or what they think is most important in their schools in terms of what is happening, isn't happening, but then also hopefully the sparking interest in actually joining. So what I can imagine is for the fall engagement, it would be that combination of like sharing information, gathering information, and recruitment.
Okay. And is there a proposed timeline for the fall engagement? Do we know if it's going to be, was the last time was in November or was it earlier? Oh no, I'm thinking November or October. Remember I had on boots.
It'll probably be sometime in October. I mean, what essentially is what is happening is the staff on the back end is doing the logistical legwork. And so what we did was we asked committees to say, yes, I have a topic. Here's what it is. And here's a quick like outline of like what it looks like. So like for the governance committee, we said, hey, we would have had draft recommendations by then. So our session will be covering like getting feedback on the draft recommendations. Or I suspect for literacy, like for standards, they said, hey, we want to talk about literacy. At this point, we have draft recommendations for things. We want to get feedback on that. Then we look to see across work plans. And this is one of the reasons I was like, yes, please put as much stuff in your work plan as possible to identify the things that were close together in time frame. So we could pick a date that was most complementary, or the staff could pick a date that was most complementary to all of the work plans. So that work is happening now. Once the staff has identified the dates and the location, or I think we'll do like one. It seems like we're leaning to like one bigger one, and then we might do two or something. But once that has been identified, we will share with the full board. But we are talking about most likely October.
Okay.
So all that needs to happen now for the committee to say, yes, this is something we would be interested in around that time. Here's a brief outline of the thing. Share that with Malayo, and Malayo will be in conversation with the staff on the back end to make sure that's involved. Hey, Alex.
Hi, I'm sorry. I'm transiting to work right now, so I apologize for the background noise. But just to clarify something that Vice President Thompson said, we actually are hoping to do the session in mid-September, just after Labor Day. And that is partially because we'd like to use fiscal year 22 funds to support that event.
Cool. So,
thanks, Alex. This is why I was like, the staff is figuring it out for us. Seriously, no, I mean, it matters.
Yeah, no, I was just curious. I think what we could do is basically do recruitment of people over the summer, and the fall engagement is basically, we'll do a request of the family engagement as a topic, with that almost being like the culminating recruitment event. And then it probably after September, then do a very specific family engagement task force launch. Does that sound like that makes sense?
Yeah.
In regards to time? Okay. So I will make sure Malayo gets like an outline synopsis of what our thoughts are. I'll share it with the group. and
Can I
go
get,
from there, and probably also
sorry, go ahead.
it's our timeline. Go ahead. I didn't have anything else. Go ahead.
Clarification on the sharing the, what do you call it? The code, the bar, not barcode, but you know what I mean, QR code. Is that what you were talking
Mhm.
about? Needs to be transferred to whatever it needs to be out of.
This, yeah, the sign up form. So basically, we were saying like there will be a sign up form, like as we're engaging with families over the summer, of like, hey, how's engagement going at your school? You know, what methods does your school use? And as people like are kind of talking, and you know, some parents are really like, yay, I'm interested in this topic. Like a couple parents at PAVE were like, yes, interested.
But you're
Put their
saying,
information in and sign up.
so we
task force.
can't
I'm sorry.
share, sorry, we can't share it yet? Is that what you're saying?
We could at one point, and then I think I saw maybe yesterday there was an email, or maybe the day before, that said that the office is working on transitioning from Google to, so it was sitting in my inbox like earlier in the week, and then like I was like, oh, I need to share it, and then this week it was like, oh, we are transitioning to Microsoft, so let's make it into the format.
Yeah.
So it ended up sitting in my inbox, but in my inbox in a good way, because we wouldn't have been able to use it with the transition. So now the staff is transitioning to Microsoft platform, and then we can share it. So next week, Malayo, so it won't sit in my inbox, will send it out to everyone, and say like the family engagement, or whenever they're going to transition from Google to Microsoft, and then folks can just start sharing it. I'll just probably send like a follow-up to tell people like what exactly the thought is behind that again.
Yep. Okay. But it
I
will
know
be,
I have a couple people, like I have like 5 names at the moment who are just interested in the work. So we'll just add to the form whenever they switch it over.
sounds good. All right. I'm going to probably represent the board at a like language access conference in August 6th. And so I thought that would be a really good time to recruit. So hoping to have it then. That was my main thing, my main objective in asking that. So
Cool
yeah.
beans. Yeah, the form would be ready by then. It seems like just next week. Do you also want to trial out the slides, or you want to just kind of give a general announcement of the board will be jumping in later?
It'll be I'll be like there with the table, you know. So if we had,
Oh,
you know, just information, that would be cool. Like a handout or something.
Oh.
Maybe an interactive handout. I don't know. But yeah, it won't be a presentation so much as just like getting families as they walk by.
oh, cool. So tabling. Gotcha. All right, yeah. So the form.
Yep.
Cool. Alrighty. So yeah, it seems like next week that will be ready. All right. Moving on to any other questions about family engagement? Okay. Last meeting, public meeting, we had a bunch of resolutions. One on attendance, the S accountability plan, the scheduling of the plan, and the sexual assault resolutions, which we already hit on what our next steps are. And then any public comment around those. Did anyone see any actions or items that we need to take up as a committee related to the topics that we passed resolutions on? Or any of the public comment?
I don't know. Don't think so.
Yeah, attendance was basically what Aussie is going to change in the formula. I mean, I guess from an outreach advocacy standpoint or more, maybe that could be something that the board does, is like maybe announce. Like, I don't know if our families will know what the meaning of the change is. Like a formal announcement of, hey, there's a new attendance regulation in place that I'm not sure if that's something that the board might want to announce that we have passed, as well as like not just the ratio, but considerations for virtual too. The other items, I guess, will be other committees.
Yeah, no, I like that idea, Carlene. I'm sorry, going back. I mean, I guess it would be good to, first of all, be versed ourselves in like what the changes mean for families so that we can at least explain it confidently. And then maybe I could imagine, like, you know, I don't know if you all go to like the beginning of the year family meetings at schools, but like, you know, just sharing some highlights from state board resolutions and work. And that could be one that's particularly relevant, you know, just to share out. So maybe if there were like bullet points, like 3 bullet points or something that are particularly pertinent to families, that could be useful.
And Alex is in the chat saying it might be worth considering a formal PR announcement of the ESSA and attendance votes. And I think, yes, we agree. That could be one, you know, announcement for us to announce, like social media, our newsletters, other formats. And then a lot of us are in beginning of the year meetings, so we can make that an announcement, at least like key points to hit on. So yes, Alex, a little PR would be helpful. Any public comment? And I know there was a lot of written public comment that I didn't get to read. And I know we had a few people talk about ESSA, so I guess that is kind of already hidden upon, but I'm not sure if anybody had any follow-up from public comment.
Well, I guess, so this is what I raised at the meeting is, I think the points that it's not actually SJP that maybe, I can't remember now. Yeah, maybe it is. But anyway, they made some points about how this 60/40 maybe isn't adequate for adjudicated youth or youth who are court involved, because they just don't have as much control over their own time as a lot of other students. They have to do certain things or they go back to, you know, jail or juvie. So they are put in sort of you know, between a rock and a hard place. So I think that's something worth maybe just, I could follow up with them and maybe bring that back to see if there's any action that makes sense to take, whether it's just raising that for OSSI or I don't know. I know they are doing it. So, but I'll ask if there's anything we can do. And similarly for the adult learners, I think that's a really interesting sort of interstitial space that like we're often not that aware of, you know, how adult learners just have different issues, you know, they have different needs. And so sometimes these regs don't really work for them. So I think, I guess what I'm saying is I will follow up with them and bring that back if it makes sense for this committee.
So I have 2 thoughts.
Yeah. Okay.
I think maybe it possibly maybe 3 thoughts, but yes, that's where follow-up. That's the first thought. Second, this is the intersection that I think I've been trying to, but I'm not so sure clearly explaining, and I suspect this may be a point where more information is needed, but there's a difference between like the definition of what constitutes present, which is really what 60/40 is about, and then the exceptions and adjustments that we make, which are actually codified in LEA level, or quite frankly, discipline policy. And so I think the 60/40, the change to 60/40 wouldn't address this. I'm not so sure that's because it's a problem with 60/40 as the threshold. I think it's a problem with how do we ensure flexibility at the school level in like what we account for. So like if I am a court involved youth and I have to meet with my parole officer, that should be counted as excused because that's never like, I guess like that's not necessarily the same as like like I think of 60-40 as addressing the things that are unexcused, not the things that we should be accommodating for and being flexible around, if that makes sense. But that, and
It's
that's
like a whole
also,
child approach.
yeah, and it's also the place where things like the conversation around transportation comes up. And so like one of the things that has been raised is like students are getting to school late because of transportation, and that the policy is supposed to be that that's counted as an excuse. Like we're not penalizing and counting that as a tardy. We're not changing the definition of like the time for tardy. We're just saying that this is a reason not to penalize a student, if that makes sense. And so I totally hear them on this doesn't address it. And I think this is a place where LEA level technically discipline policies need to be accounted for so we can make adjustments, which leads to my third thought, which is one of the reasons it might be helpful to provide or have some more conversations or whatever it is and communication around like what these changes are, what they affect, and where other, just like the intersection of attendance. I did attend last night the deputy mayor's conversation around attendance, which I do think had a different lens to it because they were more talking about ways schools are dealing with and addressing things like chronic absenteeism and truancy, which this also does not address in the same way. And so, yeah, there are conversations to be had. I wasn't quite sure what they were going to cover, so I didn't know if they were going to talk about what the attendance changes meant, because I know the Everyday Counts Committee recommendations came out of their office, but that was not, attendance is such a large issue that was not covered in this. And so I think people do need to understand what this addresses versus, and like, what are the steps we need to take to address other issues to get to a place where, you know, we as a city are improving our attendance.
Got it. Just want to write that note down. All right. So yes, thanks for raising that, Rep. Gasoy. And I know that the person who wanted to testify about that had to slide off, so I appreciate any follow-up. And then also what Representative Thompson is saying is clarity on what the new rule addresses and then other steps that the city is doing to improve attendance, I think are the next steps around that. Okay, moving into our 2 points of new business, HVAC and gun violence in youth. So, and then any start of school considerations. So with HVAC, Rep. Thompson, what you got?
So I brought this up during the working session that my intention is to propose a resolution that addresses some of the, so let me back up. We don't have, because I asked, and I think Caitlin checked, anything that talks about improving HVAC issues specifically. I know there have been things in front of the council recently. And they're mostly data requests, and they're mostly shorter term responses. I do think that as a board, and this part of this is related to just like start of school things, but this is an ongoing issue. There are some places that we can make some recommendations around like what it looks like to more comprehensively address this issue.
And question, do you think, let me finish my note. Do you think that we should just solely focus on HVAC in this resolution, or would it be too broad to also address like other school issues? Like there's considerations with like gates locking and ceilings leaking. One of my schools with HVAC, they're worried that it might just be an underlying electrical issue that an HVAC system might make even worse. So do you think we should do like specific HVAC and then hold like other school issues on the side or put them together? Any ideas?
Well, I asked Caitlin to look for HVAC specifically because we didn't have anything around that. I believe we have some things that are just like broader, we should fix the facilities. Maybe it is time to have an updated consideration around like what the state of our facilities or something. So I'd be open to that. It struck me that was not something we had specifically addressed, and it seems to be a pervasive and ongoing issue, even during and when I say during the pandemic, my stance is where we are still in the pandemic. We've kind of stopped with some of the response stuff, but we're still in the pandemic. So
very much.
That was my thoughts. I think the reason I said I flagged it for the committee and I flagged it at the working session is because I think what I'm hoping for is if there are things or suggestions like you just raised, for people to say like, hey, here's what I think about that before I take a first pass.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm for either one, like doing, because I know sometimes a broader resolution, other issues get sucked in, and it's kind of like where to start. So sometimes a more specific resolution is helpful. And I agreed, we are definitely in the pandemic. And if we're going to say, one, a lot of money was put towards HVAC, so it's supposed to filter out the virus. And it was like, if you don't have a functioning HVAC, then you can't add mitigation efforts to the top. You need to start with your baseline of a functioning HVAC. So I can see the benefit, I can see the benefit of having a specific resolution on HVACs and then moving into facilities or something, a separate something related to status facilities. And with HVACs, I'm sorry, I'm still going. You have the COVID piece, but then in the winter, it was running around the schools because HVACs were out and kids were in coats in classrooms. To immediately switch to summer, is a 90-degree classroom. So I can see benefit in just targeting one issue to start.
Yeah, I mean, I'm maybe the I don't know if it's a happy medium, but maybe one way to address this, and one of the things I was thinking about is including as a recommendation, just like this being, I think it's time for the council to revisit the PACE Act. I've mentioned this every time I've testified, just because as somebody who leaned in very heavily and pushed for the PACE Act, the big change that came was the way we modernize schools. Because we passed the PACE, we used to do it over the summer as phase modernizations. We passed the PACE Act, which could not account for the fact that we then made a shift to full modernizations, which is one of the reasons schools who have only had phase ones, many of which are in 7 and in 8, have been labeled as having some modernization, but haven't had major systems addressed like their HVACs, which yes, and I say that, I share that because I do believe it is a connection to overall facilities. And so I think there are ways to mention or reference the condition of overall facilities without it being a catch-all that's like I want to list everybody's like leaky roof, or I want to list every broken toilet. You know what I mean? Like, what is it? What I am, what you're raising is having me think through the correct grain size to move to the best action, if that makes sense.
Yes. Marcus, or did you have anything that you said?
I'm just listening. I mean, I guess maybe I missed something, but I guess I'm wondering what the action, the therefore is of the resolution. You know what I mean? Like, what are we asking? I know that Robert White's office is really trying to be proactive right now about getting DGS to get schools ready before school starts. So I would like to know where they are with that, like how things are going. But I don't know. I guess that's where I am with it, is wondering like, what are we pushing for?
I mean, I think it depends. I think this conversation is like, what is our lens to decide what is the right push? So like, one of the reasons I raised revisiting the PACE Act is that because that actually could be a therefore. I don't know if there are other therefores. So like I try to think about who has the power to do what. I think it's good that Councilmember White's office is conducting oversight of DGS, as they should, because that is one function of the council.
Right.
I go on school visits with my council member every year, and we do the whole dance of like, this is a good way to elevate the issue and encourage agencies to act sooner, but also so that when they conduct oversight, they're more knowledgeable about what the information that's being told to them from agencies. And it is also not lost on me that the council is a legislative body. And I do think the PACE Act at this point could be improved and should take into account like some of the barriers to making our modernization process, or moving schools like a Plummer, which is my neighborhood school, which definitely has kids in coats in the winter and it's sweltering spring through summer up the list. And one of those actions could be legislative, but I didn't want to start from this is my solution before I got feedback from members around understanding what our shared perspective around the problem.
Yeah. So it's in progress, sounds like. I mean, in terms of, it is definitely an issue.
Well, yeah, we know it's an issue.
Yeah.
I just, yeah.
I guess so that's interesting about the PACE Act. So what would be I get you. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, so that's what I'm asking. I'm like, I'm starting from a place of, and it's not terribly different than when we think about like sexual assault as an issue. What is it that we want to change and why? As things that we want to propose that we believe will help remedy the issue. I think both in an immediate make people feel responded to and a longer term, so it's not a problem anymore, or it's not as much of a problem anymore, right? Like, but a lot of times solutions like that do take conversation and collective thinking.
Okay.
And if you have other thoughts after this, feel free to send them my way. But I wanted to raise it, give space for conversation before I started a draft. So that's why I raised it at the working session. I'm raising it here. And then I'll likely put together a draft so people can respond back. And with the expectation that we will be able to present it at the next public meeting.
Mhm. Okay. Yeah, I'll definitely put some thoughts, think about it a little more, put some thoughts in email. I think my last thought on it is, or to add to the pot of ideas, like I think sometimes we just point to HVAC, but like we don't know why some of these like not resolutions, work order just close. I think there should be some transparency on like, we can't fix this. I think a lot of HVACs are getting patches, but is it, oh, we really need a new system and we ran out a pot of money to give everybody new systems, or we can't fix a new system in the middle of a school year because it'll be too interruptive. So I'm thinking like, I'm not sure we're clear or being transparent or open about this patch might last for 2 weeks, or we only can patch it, or we only can give you space. What are those things called? Spot coolers or heaters, because this is something we don't have money for 2-3 years. I don't know. I might be exaggerating, but I just feel like some of the issues they keep going because there's not an honest response related to this is why the system failed. Like the system is failing. Or your HVAC is, you fixed it in August and then January where it's out again. So, because I think that kind of just tempers expectations. Also just help people with like, I don't know, that's bad. I was thinking about like just when people are making choices about just schools and then facilities, like if I'm a parent of a child with asthma, I need to make sure that this building has this and this and this, to not be disruptive of having to take a couple weeks off of school because a child is in the hospital. Like those small things I don't realize, or I'm not sure we always often think about our choices, but then also impact the choices that our families have.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like a small thing, but it could be really disruptive to a child's learning.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I'm taking it.
Cool beans. And then if I think about anything else, definitely email. Where do we stop? Representative Gasoy, gun violence and youth.
Yes, I actually am going to withdraw that as a point because I need to do a little more research. I know that the mayor does, like, there was a some amount of money given to local groups that are doing work around gun violence. It's really concentrated in 7 and 8. There are some citywide initiatives. I just don't really know enough about those initiatives and how some of them are clearly just summer, or they at least are only funded through the summer with this grant. So I guess I want to find out more about what is actually happening in the city. And then maybe I will come up with a proposal if it makes sense to, ask for something, whether it's funding or, more citywide opportunities, things like that.
Well, so if it's helpful, 2 things. I've gone down this rabbit hole a decent amount because I've needed to. Yeah, I'm just gonna say I've needed to. There are organizations that, what I heard you initially ask was, are there people who, or are there efforts and initiatives that support people after they have suffered or experienced gun violence? The answer is yes. If that's what you're looking for, there are a couple of CBOs that do that for young people. Then there are if you're looking for ways like that are supposed to be more preventive, that's when you go down the violence interrupter hole. And a lot of that stuff is supposed to happen through the one's office. I think the question I've been asking of the one's office in the administration, and I encourage everyone to ask, is with the patchwork of initiatives and resources, what does that look like in my community? Because it's helpful to have a list of like, yes, or to know like this amount of dollars went to an initiative, or to list off certain offices that do different things. But I think what you want to know, Representative Griswold, is literally like, okay, so what is that supposed to look like in action where I am? Because it actually can look different in different places. So I'm happy to connect with you around just sharing what I know, but there are actually a huge amount of resources that are flowing to this. Yeah, and I have some thoughts around why and how people either like they don't feel, people still don't feel safe, or certain things are still happening, or people don't know where to go. Like it is, again, I think the question is, what does it look like?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will just add to that. I think it's all of those things you mentioned. Plus now I think there are some students who are really afraid of like mass shootings for good reason. We've had 2 within a mile of Czech, like it's just wild. Anyway, I think students, from what I understood from this parent, their child hadn't experienced anything directly, but was just feeling scared about guns, like they are, and wanted to talk to other youth about it. So it was pretty specific, and made a lot of sense to me that like students should be able to do that. I think they can probably organize in their own schools, but I was just interested to know if there's already like something I could refer her to, and I imagine, that student is not alone and sort of feeling like I'm scared to be in a group, like I'm scared to be, at school, and they're now doing these lockdown drills, and that's scary too, so it's traumatizing in a different way. Like it's a different, yet another form of emotional trauma. So yeah.
I will forward the email or the resource. I didn't open it, but I feel like U.S. Department of Education is, or maybe it's from the Biden administration. I know it's a technical assistance center that has a resource related to the long-term impact of gun violence on children or something like that. But I thought I might have saw something too, possibly about like funds going to gun violence initiatives. And I don't think, or I need to open up to see if are they just focusing on, unfortunately, mass shootings in school, or talking about the larger issue too of like community safety, and that involves guns. So I'll dig through and see. I'm pretty sure, I think I retweeted. I'll find out what it was and then forward it to folks. Because I think there's definitely an impact related to the safety piece. And it's different throughout our city. I do recall a youth that was not a Ward 8 resident, but was mentioning like he felt that there was mass shooting in DC that was covered up and was not labeled as school shooting in DC that he felt was mislabeled purposely. And that was interesting conversation to have. But it was just weird for me. My initial thought when you raised this, Representative Gazzoy, was more about the community gun violence situation, and how initiatives roll around that. And if there's going to be money flowing from the federal government, I think Representative Thompson always is like, where does the funds go? Like if we could even give guidance to DC as a board of like, hey, we know these funds are coming. We would like to see targeted investments. I'll double check. I'll make sure I think it is public information though, but I'll just look into what I saw and just double check, and then also double confirm if there are funds about to flow to states. And if there are, I wonder if we could be proactive so that DC can make sure that we're targeting our resources in the right way. Or it might, we don't know what's right and wrong, but still in a more targeted way that we're not feeling, as much as possible, we can feel the impact of where those dollars might go. The last part, I don't know about the wrap. Any other start of school issues and how we can, I guess in my head, I'm thinking, and Representative Sawyer, the more senior of us on the board, preparing for the start of school advocacy push rush of, facilities, this continued layer of COVID, no shots, no school, just thinking about like how we should prepare the board, how we should posture ourselves, what should we be thinking right now, so that we, can do, I think we do a good job as members of all like scattering and answering this parent, answering this school, showing up to this facility, that kind of thing. But I was just wondering, is there a targeted posture that we can like prepare to be ready of? Are we just collecting all this information in our feedback forms? Are we streaming it to the ombudsman? I'm just thinking about like how should we approach the start of school year flood of issues that I'll presume will happen as they do every year. Thoughts on that?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think, Alex, you can also, Alex isn't here anymore, right? Yeah, I don't think in my memory, I can't think of anything we have done as a board specific to start of school. It really has been sort of individual members doing stuff in our wards. But
Alex says he's in the waiting room.
Who is?
How do I get him out of there? Alex says he's here. He's in the waiting room.
Alex
And that was
is
at
here.
11:06.
His internet's not having problems, so he probably he dropped and tried to get back in and has to be admitted as a panelist.
Who's in control?
Oh, here we go. I think I got him.
I'm trying.
Is he back now? Yes, he's rejoining webinar as a panelist. Oh, good catch.
Let's ask the students what they think we should do. If there's anything they think we should do as a board to I mean, I guess I'm trying to think, if it makes
anything, it could be our usual, we all will answer in our given, capacities and speeds. But I just know every year there's gonna be a rush, and we're coming off of a little bit of a recess. So that'll put us like at the end of August, and people are going to be reaching out to us. I remember that one start of school year. Is that the first one? Lord, I mean, COVID was also like huge, but it was a mess. I'm not a mess, but in a sense, like a mess on my end. So I'm just a more coordinated way that we as a board can respond to, families reaching out, making sure that we're connecting people to resources, connecting people to the right offices, that kind of thing.
Do we know what the COVID protocol is this year? Because there is a wave right now. I don't know how long it's going to last, but we may have like a lot of COVID cases going into the start of school. Do we know? Like, I should know this, but maybe that's the first thing, is we should just like really know
what the COVID protocol is.
And, I mean, going back to, we should do some PR around the resolutions, but we should probably also do some PR around what's needed for the start of school. So around the vaccines, inoculations, and COVID protocol going into the fall. Maybe, you know, common info that we can share at our back to school events on those important things. I think Rep. Thompson, you brought this up that at your, like, you're giving out backpacks and having folks there to give inoculations. Is that right? Yeah, so that's like a really good thing to encourage members to set up. But yeah, I don't know if there's anything like going into our first meeting in September, anything that we should be doing. Alex, do you remember, have we ever done anything as a board for back to school?
We have not really done anything before as a board for back to school. I will say that the kind of fall engagement session that the board is hoping to hold after Labor Day, I think we're trying to coin it as like a back to school engagement session. And so using that potentially as a place to kind of talk about being back to school, but the board has never officially, to my knowledge, done anything. In the past, I know, I think it was maybe not last year, but the year before, when the board adjusted its summer recess schedule. So we recessed in July, so that in August, we actually could do a kind of y'all come, so folks could talk about their experiences with going back to school during the pandemic. But beyond that, that is kind of what I know institutionally.
Yeah, I would concur. All right, yeah, so I don't know if there's anything that makes sense for us to do as a board, but I think, you know, this is when maybe the board could just do more to support individual members. I mean, one thing, and I don't know if any progress has been made on this, I suggested that we get backpacks. We're trying to spend down some of our funds, and that is a starting place for some folks who haven't done back to school events. Like, you have the backpacks, people will come, and then you can give out other information. So that's a thought. Alex, how are we deciding that, if we're going to do that?
So I think that's going to be a conversation that'll probably happen. And I know Representative Gasoy, I think you'll be away, but during the admin meeting next week, I think that discussion is going to happen. I imagine I will touch base with leadership later today as well, in general, about some budget related things. But I do know that the backpack idea was received, and I think there are just some outstanding questions related to, is it, like, are there already a lot of backpack giveaways? Is this a space that we should enter, shouldn't enter? How does it look or work? But I do know that it's an idea that's on the table.
I think it is in some wards and not in others. I mean, I think in my ward, it's not, there aren't really.
Yeah. But I know, like, Vice President Thompson, I think she shared at the, you know,
It's a lot. Yeah.
there's a lot in Ward 7, right? I think, would you say 1,500 or something like that, full of supplies? Like, that's
I had 1,500.
Yeah,
That's not a lot for. I mean, like, you know, we have.
Yeah, but
roughly, like, we're probably approaching. Yeah, we have a lot of school-aged children, so that's a drop in the bucket for Ward 7.
Sure.
Like, that might cover all the babies in Ward 2, but not in Ward 7. So, yeah, I mean, Alex is right as far as like where it stands. So, we have our leadership meeting later today. It is something that we were putting on the agenda for the next admin meeting, in addition to the other monetary items for follow-up. So, as you know, Representative Gasoy, so we are trying to make sure, and it's one of the reasons I'm like, yes, help with a no. what's in people's work plans. We're trying to prioritize and make sure all the committee work is covered. We're trying to figure out what we need to spend down, what we can buy on the P card versus like what we need to procure, like those types of things. So that's the conversation, the larger conversation we need to have in context, and we haven't had it. But yes, the request has been received, and we will talk about it at the next admin meeting.
Okay. Yeah, so
I'm wondering, like, and I don't want to, but like maybe a one pager with some of the things, like here's information for what's needed for start of school, back to school events, like that people can, if like it's printed by the board, we can take it to summer events. I don't know, as a talking point, like not just giving people like sliding in back, like, oh, here you go, like if you want to know the COVID protocol, if you're trying to find where you know to get vaccinated, you know, if you need help with something, here's like a number you can call, that can like, yeah, be either you can take with you to back to school events, or I don't know, but something.
I mean,
like that we can get.
Sorry. No, I was going to say, I do think there's probably a need for some common info around the start of school. I think one of the questions I would have, and I expect, and Dan and Serena are really good about this, but just like, what is it that is already, what are like the perennial questions we get? And we already have resources around as far as like the Office of the Student Advocate, and just sharing things like the Office of the Ombudsman and directing people there, versus like what are things we may need to create for the start of this school year. So like there is a actual change to the attendance policy, or I do expect the COVID protocols will change, and I am also sensitive to the fact that they might not actually be the same across schools, because, you know, as the restrictions loosen, schools can make more decisions, and you know, we don't have one school district. We have like 60 or 70 in real life, because every charter can make their own rules. And so I do want to, I think that talking with the ombudsman and the student advocate around like what already exists and comes up every year, like what are you currently getting calls about, versus what are things like we can and should create that are helpful like across as a baseline, and where are there places we might need to say, for questions about this, you should contact your school, because I also don't want to misinform people when rules are different, you know, like, yeah. So I hear that, and I think those are some of the questions I would have, and like what goes into that. I totally think it's possible to do and to support members. The other thing I would flag is Serena flagged that she was, and Dan agreed, that reaching out to OSA and the ombudsman about events coming up in your ward, so they know and they can attend and be engaged with parents, is particularly helpful. I do that regularly. And sometimes I think the other practice I would encourage members to do is to like partner with them if you want a table somewhere. So like they're coming to my back to school event, or I'm going to, like, I'll be at the open streets in Ward 7. I'm going to reach out and see if they're going to, and we can just like share, because we're sister offices. And I think encouraging like those points of connection, so people know that like reaching out to me, I'm also going to refer you to the ombudsman in some cases, or like explaining some of those connections, or having them there as a resource to answer questions, I think is really helpful.
Mm-hmm. It might be good if we like that, just as a point to refresh members of like, hey, when you're getting ready for back to school, or as you're in events this summer, or as you're starting to get back to school, phone calls, looping in student advocate, dancing, at least so we have a baseline as members of this is how we are being present, responding, and engaging with back to school items. So cool. That's all I had on the agenda. I'm not sure, and that was all the topics you all raised. It might be good. Does anybody have anything else? Nope. Okay.
Sorry, Representative Reed. I will just say that once we do know more information related to the state board's kind of back to school fall engagement event, we'll make sure that that is fully transmitted to the whole board. But as Vice President Thompson said, the staff have been working behind the scenes to try to figure out like the actual date and actual location and securing those things. And just for this committee's knowledge, and I know Vice President Thompson knows this, but we've looped in Dan and Serena on the front end. And so we want to make sure that both the Office of Student Advocate and the Office of the Ombudsman are also included in any sort of state board wide gathering event that will be held.
Cool beans. Well, thank you all. There's not an August meeting, right? We're not doing committee meetings in August.
It's up to the
How does
committee.
that work?
So it's up to the committee to decide. We're saying that if you don't need to meet, then that makes sense. That is what summer light means. So I expect some committees will and some committees won't. I think what would be helpful, friendly reminder, as work evolves and is added, just to kind of take some time to update the work plans, because that way, as we look across and things change, we can be like, oh yeah, like I know that this is where we are now on the family engagement thing. So we should consider that, right, in our spend down and resources. Because that is the point. It is to consider all the things.
Yeah, it's weird because whenever the work plans usually due at the beginning of the year, it was quiet for outreach and advocacy. It was kind of like, honestly, thinking about what could be added. But yes, I would use summer light to update our work plan so that folks know where we are. I'm going to anticipate, because our meeting typically will fall in the latter part of August, that we will have a meeting, just because it's the nature of our committee work to be responsive to whatever we might be hearing from now and then, and knowing that people will probably start reaching out to the board around that time for beginning of the year stuff. So in the meantime, everybody enjoy summer light, and we'll be fine.
It is. Thank you, Vice President Thompson. This is another piggyback off a comment that was made earlier by Representative Reed. And so this is just because I do have an audience of some board members right now, and I will make this announcement at the working session too. But the district government is transitioning away from its Google Suite. That means that we are being forced, yes, I'm using that word, into using SharePoint and the Microsoft suite of tools. I applaud Representative Gasoy for already embracing SharePoint, but just to other members, like to start to try to move yourself away from Google Docs, because I believe the transition date will be the end of August.
Okay, so wait, where's the work plan right now?
In SharePoint.
In SharePoint.
Oh, okay. So it's best to do that before the transition, use a different format, put it in Microsoft Word. What should I do?
So I'll explain more of this at the working session, but just because, I know some committees are not going to be meeting, and I just want to be proactive about this. It's my understanding that all Google Docs that exist will be transitioned to an archive in SharePoint. There are some versions of documents that cannot be transitioned. For example, Google Forms cannot be transitioned to a Microsoft. That is why we actually need to physically create a new thing. But there will be some documents that I think they're able to migrate over, but I don't think that's a guarantee that there will be a full clean like swoop. But this really is more just like a general announcement. I will make it again at the working session in August for all members, but like we do need to start working to move ourselves away from the Google Suite, much to my chagrin, much to others' chagrin, I'm sure too. But it is kind of forced move that is happening.
So I'll transition to Excel. That's what it sounds like.
Basically, yeah, but like, so SharePoint is basically like Microsoft's version of Google Suite. And so like they have Excel that is built in online and you manipulate it like you would a Google Sheet, but it is just on a different platform.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's more than a transition to Excel. It's like, okay, so all of our committees have folders already in SharePoint,
Mhm.
right? But I think the biggest way this will affect the board is like internal documents that we share for comment are largely have been Google Docs. And so now we would probably use like OneNote or something, like one of the Microsoft, but all of our, just so there's no like alarm that it's like everything has changed. All of our work plans, that type of the stuff that goes like from like the staff creates and goes on to assembly, most of that stuff is actually already on SharePoint, because SharePoint is what we use as like our backend permanent home. We don't have a Google Drive that we have to transition over. It's really individual documents and certain practices as far as internal communications that will have to change. Is that helpful? So like your work plan is already in SharePoint, and there's already a folder for advocacy and
Okay.
outreach in SharePoint. Is safe. But there are things that will
I just
change.
gotta add. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I don't want to be alarmist or anything like that, but I just like, I know for me, it'll take some time.
Cool.
So-
Beans. All right. Well, enjoy Summer Light. We'll work on next steps, updating the work plan, getting notes out to everybody. But yeah, see you all soon. Emily, is our next meeting 11:30?
It is. So I will see you momentarily on another Zoom.
All right, bye.
Right? I have to switch. Or can I just stay on here? No, right?
Have to switch Representative this way.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
And I'm
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay.